Okay, so today we're going to discuss what is the playwright and the tools it takes for the playwright to write a play. So notice that when we think of writing, we think R-I-T-E, write, to write something down. However, playwright is spelled with the word play and then W-R-I-G-H-T. Um, it begs the question, why is it spelled this way? So consider that now, and maybe if you have thought of other ways to write something, W-R-I-G-H-T, you might have come up with what a playwright is. The write is in playwright is a worker or maker, one who works in wood, such as a shipwright. My plays are wrought as much as written. And this is by Charles Ludlam, who is a playwright. So yes, it means to make the play, not necessarily just to write it, because it takes more to playwriting than just actually putting pen to paper and putting words on the paper. It takes a whole work of art. It's to make something, like a shipwright makes a ship. And so now we're going to discuss how we can better understand the craft and artistry of playwriting it takes to build a play, as in the craft and artistry of shipwriting. So I'm going to show you this picture, and you can see that it's Aristotle clearly, but he's with another man, and we're going to discuss Aristotle. He wrote something called the Poetics, which helps explain what a good play should entail. So, you might have figured, you might know already that Aristotle was a Greek philosopher and teacher. Just a couple of the things he did. And he was a student of Plato. So yes, that's Plato in the picture with him, the student and teacher. So he wrote the Poetics in 14th century BCE, before the Common Era, remember that? And it's a descriptive and scientific approach to what plays and what it takes to make a good play. Sophocles' Oedipus is considered the perfect drama, and if you are familiar with Oedipus, then you will remember that Oedipus is the story of the king Oedipus, who was born to a king and queen, and it was foretold that he would kill his father and marry his mother. So his parents, his mother, had him sent away, presumably to die. However, another king and queen eventually found him and raised him as their son. So Oedipus found out once he grew up that his fortune that was that he would kill his father and marry his mother. So he was so concerned that he would do this that he left home so he would not kill his father and marry his mother. And in the process of leaving home, he came upon a man as he was walking on the road, and they end up having a fight, and he ended up killing this man. And he continued on the road to this village and found that the king at this village had been killed, and that his wife was left a widow. And basically he was told that he could marry the wife, and he started a family with this woman, and he vowed to find out who had killed her husband. Eventually he does find out that he indeed was the one who killed his wife's husband, which led him to finally understand that he had actually killed his father and married his own mother. So there are lots of twists and turns in this. This is just the very simplified version of Oedipus. I invite you to read it if you ever get a chance, or at least read a condensed version of it. But it's considered the perfect drama. And the perfect drama is identified by 6 dramatic elements, which we will go over. And we'll consider these the elements of drama, the tools in your toolbox as a playwright. So the first thing, of course, is the plot, what the story is about. The character or the agents of action, the doers. The language, the forms of speech and writing, all the forms of the spoken language. Playwriting is an oral art form, which includes verse, prose, and narrative. Music, which is everything that we hear as an audience. It includes the language, but it also includes song and music and verse. Music is organized sound. The spectacle, which is everything we see, it's visual storytelling, and usually it has to be a little bit grander than just the average thing that we see. The theme, which is the thought, the main idea of the play, the question it asks. For instance, the thought of the play is its central idea, which we discussed in directing. Ask yourself, what does the play have to say about the human condition? Is there a moral? A play can have more than one theme. So I want to tell you a little bit about the living newspaper. This was, it's a play building exercise, and we'll discuss how it's turned into a play building exercise developed by a contemporary playwright and teacher named Eric N. But it's based on the living newspaper of the Depression era. The Federal Theater Project started this to where they would put actual theater artists to work when there was no work, and it also allowed people who were going through a lot of struggles during the Depression to be able to go and enjoy theater. So they would travel to different towns and basically put on plays by just opening up the local paper and finding out what the local story is. So we see here there was a play about a horse that eats a hat. So sometimes that might be the only thing that was in the paper that week. Or this story, Created Equal, the Spirit of 1776, which is, of course, about the beginning of the United States. So consider how that living newspaper works when I'm going to talk to you briefly about a story of the ungrateful son, which is actually a Grimm's Brother fairy tale. And if you are familiar with the Grimm's Brother, you know that they're German brothers who created a lot of our stories that we know to this day. And it was actually written down in the early 19th century. So listen for the various elements of playwriting. All of the things that we talked about in terms of the elements of drama, those are the things that Aristotle came up with in the Poetics. A man and his wife were once sitting by the door of their house. They had a roasted chicken set before them and were about to eat it together. Then the man saw that his aged father was coming, and hesitantly took the chicken and hid it. He would not permit his father to have any of it. The old man came, took a drink, and went away. Now the son wanted to put the roasted chicken on the table again, but when he took it up, it had become a great toad, which jumped into his face and sat there and never went away again. If anyone wanted to take it off, the toad looked vehemently, so no one would venture to touch it. And the ungrateful son was forced to feed the toad every day, or else it fed itself on his face. Thus he went about the world knowing no rest. So we'll start with the plot. What's underneath? What are the conflicts? What are the potential conflicts of the story, both external as well as internal? What makes a good conflict? Someone wins, someone loses. The battle of wills is fun to watch. The man wants chicken for him and his wife. The father arrives and wants chicken. This conflict is a desire of desires and objectives. So the internal conflict could be maybe the woman wants a chicken, the wife. Maybe the wife is torn. Um, Maybe the father was a bad father. Maybe he locked the son in the closet without feeding him. Maybe the son is struggling with these feelings. Maybe the chicken doesn't want to be turned into a toad. So there could be things that are going on that we have to find out internally, as well as the obvious things. If there's no conflict, then there's no good story. Basically, we need tension to make a good story. So the next thing is the characters. Characters are the agents or the doers of the action. So think of the characters in this play and be specific when you consider them. Remember, non-human characters, the points of view. So there's also the chicken. We've got the man, the woman, and the father, as well as the chicken/toad. So you have to think of how to make the characteristics specific and consider the details. Also with the inanimate, remember it's a fairy tale and it's theater, so we as playwrights must make the rules of our world. What about the fork and the knife maybe? Maybe we want to add a fly in the room. All of those things could be added. The characters create a bond with the audience so the audience can identify with what's going on stage and have empathy. Remember, we discussed empathy as well as already. So consider what the characters need. We've already named them. So we've got the man. So the great thing about once we become the playwright/director is we can start to figure out these specific details of the character, what we want our characters to look like. When we, for instance, cast the character, maybe what we want to name him: Ed or Walter, Benjamin, Rupert, Desi or Dice. Is he a very strict-looking African-American man, or more of a laid-back, business casual type of white guy? Maybe he's just a bum, or looks like one at least. Consider what we want the wife to look like. Is she a beautiful bride, African-American bride, or a very homely looking, maybe a farmer looking wife? What do we want to name her? Bertha or Shawnee, Maud or Eileen, Tiffany, Wanda? We can name her anything because she doesn't have a name. So that's when we come up with those ideas. Or maybe she thinks she's, a hottie. And then consider the dad and what kind of names we would give him. Is he has to be older. Is he happy looking, Caucasian man, or a desperate looking Asian man, or more of a politician type of guy, African American? All of these things we can consider. And remember, when we discussed directing, that the characters, maybe you want them to all match, or maybe we want to do non-traditional casting. It's totally up to us. And then also, as I discussed before, the non-human characters. Remember, that's the chicken and the toad, and there's others. Maybe we want to add who tries to pull the toad off of the face. And then, of course, the spectacle. The spectacle can be conveyed by stage directions or by character dialogue, or both. But remember and decide how specific you can be. Think about conveying the moment just through description of physical action, like an action movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger, for instance, type of film, where you have 5 car crashes, a helicopter jump, tons of bullets, a love scene, all in 2 minutes. Or maybe one tagline of dialogue, that is what's considered a spectacle. We don't necessarily have to hear it as much as we have to see it and say, wow. It's the wow factor. And finally, the language / the music. Remember, every word counts. The words and phrases and sentences, even the silence of a playwright, is used to tell the story. There's different types of styles of writing the play. It can be written with dialogue, which means more than one person talking, or monologue, just one person talking. Verse, like Shakespeare, where it's almost like poetry, as well as stage directions, narration, where someone else is telling the story, or even a song. Language ranges from highly poetic, like Shakespeare's verse, or colloquial, everyday speech. Maybe there's profanity. Maybe there's just a different way of saying things, where people say, I don't know, just fun, humorous things. Susan Laurie Parks, who is a playwright, writes words, and she spells them the way that she thinks that people actually say them out of their mouth, so that we can hear the dialect. Playwrights employ all of the poet's tools: rhythm and repetition, metaphor, alliteration, slang, consciously choosing each word to create a maximum desired effect. Language defines character. The way someone speaks tells us something about who they are. So remember, verse can also be considered as rap or blank verse, haiku, structured speech. It doesn't have to rhyme. So all of that creates the music of the play. When deciding about plot, remember that the story is everything that ever happens in the play. And that's very important when, for instance, writing the response to a play that you've seen, or to a story that you've read, even in your English class, is that you don't have to recount every single thing that happens. Otherwise, you're just retelling the story. But the plot is what we see on the stage. It's the action as it unfolds before our eyes. The plot is the spine of the play, the arrangement of incidents, what happens, the sequence of events, the main things, the hot spots. It's compressed because of space and time, and it moves the action forward. And hopefully it moves us as the audience if it's done well. It's the events. It's what happens. You have options of the way you want to tell your story as a playwright. Maybe it's chronologically or in reverse. What do we want to heighten? What is it that we want the audience to come away with? What will be the most fun to actually hear and see? And finally, remember, the idea or the theme of the play is the last element of drama, according to Aristotle. It's the central idea. So ask yourself, what questions do you want to leave unanswered? What do you want your audience to wrestle with? Who wins? Who loses in the end? Is there a clear moral or message? What does your play have to say about what it means to be human? A play can have more than one theme. So with our story, for instance, it could be a simple moral, or so consider what the theme could be. Maybe it's respecting your elders, or don't be greedy, or care for others. Plays don't always have to have a clear moral, but it is helpful to try to express the main idea of the play in a simple active sentence, like the morals that I just stated. So also consider what it takes to make a play about something when you don't know anything about it. It helps to travel to that location and hunt and gather information for inspiration. Be able to just listen to your gut. What do you think you want to to talk about, and ask questions if you can about someone who's been there or someone who knows something about it. Assume nothing. So, for instance, it could be, this is a big Ghana, finding out everything you can about Ghana before you would write a play about Ghana. And the example that I wanted to give you about how to make a play about something when you don't know anything about it is one of my former professors, Nefertiti Burton, who wrote The Magic Tree, and adapted it for elementary school and middle school students. It's actually a Yoruba folktale. A girl who learns generosity, integrity, and courage are more important than physical beauty. She also directed it, and was a professor at the University of Louisville, where I was. So she actually studied Yoruba. She went to West Africa. She actually went to several places in Africa and studied as much as she could about the culture after reading the play, or reading the story. We see here it's a book, and then adapting it into an actual play. So, if possible, meet those people who are involved, and know and use all of the tools that we've discussed, the elements of drama. Then you would make the play, you'd share it with others, and then do remakes. So all of this is what a playwright is. A playwright is a visionary, someone who considers what they want to do and makes it happen. They're a witness. They have to watch what's going on in the world and then recreate it. They're an architect, as we consider an architect one who draws the plans to build the building. That's what the playwright does. They draw the plans to make the actual play. They are not necessarily the actor who conveys the play, but they put the words on the paper so that it comes alive eventually. They're a cartographer, someone, for instance, who does the boat, makes the boat. And a cartographer is someone who makes the map, so how it happens. And they're the instigator, so they have you ask certain questions of yourself that maybe you would have never thought to ask before. So now we know everything that a playwright is, and what a playwright does, and how you yourself can be a playwright. So continue on with the rest of the module. Have a great week, and come back next week for more interesting things. I look forward to having another week with you, and have a great weekend. Bye.